All right, today I'm very excited to do a very special episode. They're all special to me. They're like my little children. Each one of them is special in its own way. But today is extra special. We're going to go over a particular segment of the market that I'm excited about. We have a guest here, Michael Mayer of Elevented Inc. Michael has been in this business for a little while. We've met locally at a local show outside of Philadelphia. And I really love all the stuff that he does and his energy and his excitement. So I decided to have him on the podcast. So Michael, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell a little bit about, this market or the industry, or I should say just your business and when you got into it, and just give a little intro about who you are.
Sure. Thanks for having me. Really, really excited to be here. As you said, Tony, I'm Michael Mayer, president of and founder of Elevented Inc. My partner is Tom Kovac, and we run this business together. I joined the precious metals community around COVID. I had a fear that the dollar was losing its stability in the world as the reserve currency. I think a lot of people actually had that fear back then. At that time, it was more rational than conspiracy driven. And I started collecting modern first. I bought my first silver round from Ep.6, my first gram of gold from Ep.6, got it in my hands, and there's something about it. To this day, it's almost indescribable. It just feels like treasure. It
Yeah,
feels like
I know the
I've
feeling.
hunted and found something. Believe it or not, and this is probably going to absolutely blow your mind when I tell you this.
Okay, I'm ready.
The reason I got into trading was you. In vintage poured bars
Okay.
years ago on a group on Facebook that I love,
Yeah.
you put up a Swiss of America 5 ounce extruded bar that
Okay.
still resided within its original thick plastic sleeve.
Yep.
And I had never participated in a DND, a deal no deal format, which is a way to acquire
Sure.
metals in the social media marketplace. And you struck a deal with me, and it was painless, and I got it, and that was one of my first vintage bars. And I was hooked. And then a year later, I think I traded it out for something that was worth $50 more. And I
Oh,
started seeing
you
the,
sold me out for $50.
yeah, I
You get
did. That's what you were worth to me, $50. $50 in an experience.
it.
Fifty
That's
dollars in a
cool.
reference.
Nice.
So yeah, that's basically where I started. From there, it just naturally evolved. In January of 2024, my friend Nev Villasenor launched the Element Exchange group on Facebook, along with help from Wyatt Nordberg, and volunteered. I volunteered as tribute, and we
Mm,
helped to build this group, and it became a business for me. It is a side income for me, but it's grown by the day. So that's
yeah.
a kind of synopsis.
Well, I will say I'm very excited that I was part of your journey there. I do remember what we're referring to is we're referring to some Facebook groups, and there are groups on Facebook where we trade and kind of gush about our collections and we show off pieces. We have things called Toner Tuesday. Toner Tuesday is a day that we show off typically a piece that has like a nice tone to it. I've had a couple episodes about toned coins, so we can also have toned vintage silver bars as well. And I sold in this group that we were referring to many years ago, back in 2020, right around COVID or so. And so that's, I guess, how it sparked your interest, which is really cool. I remember that exact sale, and I remember having those extruded bars from Swiss of America in the original wrapper. I think it was a 5 ounce bar,
Yes.
and yeah, I remember doing that deal. So that's really exciting to hear.
Yeah, sure.
All right, so I'm going to start with the basics. So, what defines a vintage silver ingot or bar? Is it purely the age, or is there other factors like a design or the where it was made or the manufacturing style? What's your take on that?
So great question. The definition of vintage is a sliding scale that is generally agreed upon to reside within a time frame. So to be more specific, currently most of the community believes vintage to be anything that was made before 1990. Some communities have slid that scale forward to be before 1995. Of course, as we keep moving forward through
Sure. Okay.
time, the definition expands. That's number one. So you're looking at a range anywhere 1995 and back, but mostly prior to 1990. It has to be precious metals, obviously, goes without saying.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Predominantly silver, but obviously gold bars and
Yeah.
palladium, platinum exist in the vintage world. They must not be, with notably few exceptions, and there are some, they must not be monetized. So you can't call a 1921 Morgan silver dollar vintage by this definition. because
Okay.
it is a monetized sovereign coin. There are some
Okay.
exceptions. And as a matter of fact, throughout this entire conversation, I think the common theme that we're going to find on all of the topics we cover is that there are exceptions to every generalization that we're going to make. Might be true of other things in life as well. But that would be
Of
my
course.
definition. Prior to 1990, personally, I call it 1989 and earlier.
Yeah.
Can't be monetized. Can be an ingot, can be a round, doesn't have to be a bar, can be pressed, can be poured, can be cast. The form doesn't preclude it from
Okay.
its definition as a vintage piece.
Yeah, that's a good point. I know that there are some, maybe there's a segment of the segment here in terms of this market where they focus mostly on the poured ingots, because typically I would say the really old stuff, the style of making those set of manufacturers typically a poured design, but at the same time, one of the major manufacturers that we all collect, which is Engelhard, which we'll get into, they have a lot of stamped ingots or ingots that are not necessarily poured per se, and those also carry a premium and are interesting to collect. Yeah, when I got started in this, I remember the defining line was 1980, so it was kind of I don't know if they limited it to 80 or it was like within the 80s. But a really key point was a lot of the bars that we're going to look at today were made in the 1980s because there was a run up in the price of silver at that time. For those who know your history, at least probably not a lot of people out there, in the 1980s, there were these two brothers, the Hunt brothers, who decided they wanted to corner the market on silver. They tried to purchase up, I believe, a lot of the silver commodity futures. They ran the price up silver up to, I believe it's high, all-time high in the $50, $55 kind of range. And so because of that, people now became lucrative to find silver, to get it, to refine it, to pour bars. And you had a lot of these mom and pop manufacturers, mom and pop refiners, creating ingots to then sell to people because they wanted to buy silver. And so now today, fast forward 40 years, I guess, and now these things have become collectible and interesting. So, anything you want to add to that before I jump into our presentation or our pictures we want to show?
Just that there is I agree with you, there is a huge, much larger demand for poured ingots over pressed ingots, but the demand is there for all. And additionally, 1980s are definitely your fattest in the center of the bell curve of where you're going to find poured ingots. But there's 1970s, 60s, 50s, they are out there.
Yeah, we're
And
gonna look
they
at some of
have,
those.
yeah, we're going to look at some of those. Sure.
Yeah, 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 and frankly, the really uber rare stuff goes all the way back into the 19th century, so the 1800s. Precious metals have been a part of the economy for centuries in this country as well as in the entire world, and offices called assay offices existed where people could bring the metals that they had, let's say pulled out of the ground out of North Carolina, and they wanted to create a gold coin or a gold bar or something out of this metal. The assay offices would boil it down, kind of melt it down and create and refine it and create a singular ingot of a particular fineness and purity, and then use those, I guess, to give back to the people who asked for it, or to turn that then into coins so they could use it for actual money and so forth. So yeah, so some of these, not some of the ones that we have today, but there is a whole market for those that are like 19th century that go, oh, way back. And we're talking about big money as well to get into some
Oh,
of those
yes.
stuff. But
I think people will be shocked if this podcast is your first foray into vintage poured bars. A lot of you are going to be absolutely shocked when we start talking about valuations.
evaluations, yeah, it will be, yeah, I think so. I agree with you. So let me take a second to bring up the presentation. Okay. All right, so we have probably about close to 19 or so images to walk through, and this is gonna be this is really, when I say the tip of the iceberg, this is like some snow that's kind of like wafting on the top of
So,
the iceberg. Okay, there are so many different refiners and so many different varieties and so many different years that these types of things have been produced. We're kind of just touching. So, but anyways, you sent this over to me as a good
yes.
example of some poured ingots. It looks like. So tell us a
Yes.
little bit about these.
The reason why I selected these ingots to send to you is to show everybody what you're looking at is essentially the entry level to vintage poured bars. There are characteristics visually that are very telling that these are older ingots, their tone, their natural darkening, the stamps, the writing of 999 fine instead of writing Ep.6 to represent the purity is an indication of, or fine silver being written out is an indication of an older bar. The fact that these bars are in fact poured is an
Mm-hmm.
indication that they're older bars. But the reason I selected these in particular was because of one of the fundamental rules of vintage bar trading that we all live by as a culture, which is unless there is a maker's mark stamped on the bar, no
Mm-hmm.
matter how sure you are that something is in fact a maker, it is expected that you will not call it or refer to it or try to transact on it. This also can work. This works for you when you're purchasing them because
Mm-hmm.
you are well within your rights to say, I understand those 4 2-ounce ingots look strikingly similar to a Nevada coin mark poured bar
Yeah,
from the
exactly.
1980s. However,
Yep.
since they are not stamped as such, they do not trade as such, and they do not hold the premium that they do.
Yeah.
Somebody that they should. Somebody in the community once said to me something that blew my mind. He said, "You think we're trading silver? We're not trading silver. We're trading stamps." Um,
Oh wow.
and that is a
That's
very
profound.
profound
Yeah.
thought.
That's profound. Yeah.
Once you establish that the bar is 999 silver, after that, we don't care. Now
Yeah.
we're going to look at what does this bar as a piece of art and history
Yep.
bring to the table. So this is a entry level example of vintage ingots. As a buyer, you should be avoiding premiums on these, and as a seller, you should avoid representing them as something they are not.
Okay. All
That's why I
right, so
started with these.
that's great. No, it's a fantastic little intro, and I completely agree with what you're saying. It's a very profound little quote and statement. And I think one of the things I'll point out that you just said is it's a theme that's been coming up in the last couple episodes I'm doing, which is this concept of art and owning art. When we trade coins or we collect coins and we collect toned coins or we collect coins of a particular look or appearance, as well as then getting into these ingots, we always keep talking about them as pieces of art because they are unique and they're beautiful. You learn the beauty through learning about the segment of the market, in my opinion. You figure out and you get exposure and you start to feeling a sense of what beauty is, and the aesthetics aspect kind of grows in you, in my experience. It's my experience. And it's the same thing that happened when I studied art and got into the Renaissance and so forth years ago. But I digress. All
Very
right,
cool.
we'll just keep moving. All right, so we got now this one. So I see
Hmm.
definitely I see a couple that don't really have any hallmarks, and then I got one down
Hmm.
here. So tell us, go ahead.
This would be I guess you could argue, one could argue this is a step up from what I just showed you. They are still unhallmarked bars, but however, they become a little bit more, they have more character to them. They have more unique identifying marks where truly vintage connoisseurs know which likely these stamps are. They weren't shared by too many
Yeah.
refiners. And this is another example of generic vintage bars. Generic vintage sounds almost like counterintuitive. Generic meaning not stamped by the maker.
Yep.
I have no problem saying that that top bar that it looks extruded is undoubtedly a New Hope gold and silver mold,
Yeah.
New Hope gold and silver stamp, sometimes International Coin Museum mold and stamp. The
Okay.
center bar, a Perco. I have one behind me that's
Mm-hmm.
I could pull right now that has that exact thing, Perco written across it. The bottom bar a little harder for me to tell you who the maker is, whether or not that pure silver is a generic stamp. I don't. My education is limited on that one. But the before we move on, I just want to point out
Yeah.
that one reason why I'm showing you these is because to enter into the vintage bar space is a specific. You have a desire for one of few things. One is price preservation. So
Mm-hmm.
when silver pricing spot starts to drop, these bars, the ones before it, despite being entry level and unhallmarked, they tend to hold their value per ounce better than generic silver does. However, generic or modern bullion. However, you can't have it both ways, which also means that as the price rises, these rise in concert. So you're not
Mm-hmm.
really they're a little resilient because they have that vintage check mark, that vintage moniker, and they're insulated from negative spot
Yeah.
movement a splash. So the purpose of
Interesting.
vintage is to insulate yourself from negative spot movement. So people sometimes think that there's gonna be a compounding premium as the spot price rises, and that hasn't proven to be the case, especially in 2025.
Gotcha. All right. I think you just blew some people's minds.
Okay.
That was good. That was good. That was good.
Mhm.
It was very in depth. I want to bring it back to a very almost elementary question here. Do you have any idea, if you had to guess, why did New Hope, which was a refiner outside in Pennsylvania, I remember, why did they choose not to put their hallmark on this top bar, you think?
It's a great question. I have a very strong opinion, and I
Okay.
know for a fact that it's true for. Okay, so there are some refiners that will make a bar like this and then sell it to a private business. Maybe it's a coin shop,
Uh,
maybe it's another refiner, maybe it's
yeah.
another whoever, and saying, "Hey, I did the work, I did the stamps. You want to
Yep.
buy yourself a stamp, hallmark them, and away they go." We see that all the time
Mm,
across the Ohio bars. They're oftentimes referred to the
yep.
Ohio as the. I have some in the photo slot in the photo show where this mold was reused by 7, 8 different companies, but
Yes.
Silvertown or Ohio Precious Metals poured them all.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so that there's a share there. Sometimes they're in error. Sometimes someone just fell asleep at the wheel and just didn't do their
Interesting.
job that day.
Yeah,
It's
errors is
hard to tell which
something
is
that
which.
we could do a whole separate thing just on bars that have some kind of an error to them. And by the way, just want to be really clear, I use the term bar and ingot interchangeably. So most of the time they're referred to as silver ingots. Ingots being a strip of metal, I guess, or kind of a loaf of metal. I don't know what the right definition, but a bar is, I think, a little bit more of a colloquial kind of term for it. But we use these terms completely interchangeably in the course of the conversation. I think a lot of the collectors just kind of refer to them as bars, so we'll stick with that.
Okay.
So, and by the way, I'm not educating you. I'm educating our audience. I know you know this stuff,
Oh,
Michael.
okay. No, I'm
Yeah.
just.
So, not be like, hey, Michael. I don't know if you knew the difference between an ingot and a bar, but I'm going to tell you now here in this public podcast what that is. No, not doing that. So, anyways, we'll move on. All right, so this was one of the ones that I didn't know where to throw into the mix. So this ended up just kind of naturally going into here.
Sure.
Is this a good segue
It
for this
is.
one? Okay.
So now we've entered into hallmarked bars. Now, Agnon is my personal favorite refiner. And to
Okay.
be clear, sometimes one of the misnomers or misunderstandings about me personally is that people believe that I know so much more than I do. I'm fluent in Google. There's too much. If you were to put a random bar on the screen right now and say, "Tell me who," I don't even know the name of the. I know the guy's name might be. I think it's Paul something that was a Chicago gangster that opened up Agnon and then rented a couple of bays in Pompano Beach,
Okay.
Florida.
Okay.
Started refining and then got taken out of business by the town or the state for improperly venting cyanide. Okay, that story is awesome to me. But Agnon is a sleeper, meaning that it's not a refiner that is as collectible as a Silvertown or an Engelhard, but these bars command premiums. These are 600. These are easily $600 to $800 a piece. And just to put that in perspective for people, those are 10-ounce bars. That's $80 an ounce. Those
Okay.
bars. Why? Well, there's a couple of reasons why these specific Agnon bars have that kind of premium. Number one,
Okay.
if you notice, these are sequential serial numbers. People love that, the
Sure.
numerology of collecting.
Yep.
Two, Agnon has a unique propensity to have machined tops with what's known as peaked sides. So it's like on one hand, it kind of looks like a press bar until you look at the side of it and you see it's got pour lines and layering. And that makes it unique. And although we can't flip it on the backside of these bars, the backsides are completely poured and soft. So this is my favorite bar, but this would be considered on the moderate to lower end of premiums in vintage
Mm-hmm.
bars. So if you were to
Okay.
walk into a coin shop and somebody had these laying in there and they're like spot plus $2, this would be a
It's a
great
no
buy per
brainer.
ounce.
Yeah, it's
It's a
no brainer.
no-brainer.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. All right. Interesting. I've actually never seen these before, so this is new for me. And I did notice the sequential aspect to them. But if I walked into a coin shop and I just saw something even of this style, I saw the fact that it had a hallmark on it. It was clearly poured. It had this kind of old look to it. I would be buying them absolutely, 100%. I would be trying to pick these guys up
Yep.
just for huge value because there is a market, as we're explaining to everybody here. There is a market of people that love this stuff, and as Michael just mentioned about values, that's approximately what these bars would trade for out there. So, moving on to this, so I bring up this one because this I think looks a lot like those ones from previous slides, or
Mhm.
No, those other ones look kind of like
Those were
Nevada
2 ounce, no,
Marks.
on Hallmark. These are
Y-
actually Hallmark fives.
All right.
I brought this up to I brought this slide in to talk about how what people collect is not always driven by the same factors. So here
Okay.
you have four Star Metals bars. These are again moderate to lower premium vintage poured bars. I know for a fact, and I've seen it myself, that there are people that do number sequencing chases on these.
Hmm.
Um, great folk, great guys on Facebook that I follow
Can you explain what
have
that
done
is
this
real
where
quick?
yes, it's when you want one bar of every weight down to the, in this case, down to the hundredth. So
Okay.
5.41, 5.42, 5.3, and these people will hunt these bars to fill in their sequences. As you
Hmm.
can imagine, as their sequences get larger, those gaps begin to matter more to them because now they've got so much more invested in this project emotionally and monetarily.
Wow.
So these bars can sometimes command, this is something no one would ever think of, that if there's only a couple of 5.41s that were ever happened to be made, then the weight of the bar can actually drive its value by 100th of an ounce.
That's interesting. See,
A hundredth
I
of an ounce could be $100 more if to
okay.
the right person who can't fill, who's sequencing is what I'm saying, as an
Okay.
example.
Yeah, this is a very esoteric element here of the collecting side. But I believe you. I actually I never heard that. What I'm more familiar with is like say these serial numbers 01537. If let's say that was 015 January 5th, 1982, somebody might want that bar because it resembles their, their birth date.
Absolutely. Or just 0001. That's another thing.
Yeah,
Lower
yeah,
serial
super.
numbers tend to command
But
values.
yeah, I didn't know that. That's very interesting. I was not aware of the individual chasing of the
The
digits.
weights.
Yeah, and I think we are certainly getting into the, I would say, the, I don't know, the realm of this that is the really intense collector who is trying to build sets. And this is a great kind of point because I think with coins, there's many ways of collecting dates and mint marks and so forth. When it comes to vintage bars, a lot of people want to collect different ingots from the various refiners, knowing that within a particular refiner you can then collect within weights or cereals or so forth adds another level of it's interesting because that is what drives the hunt. That's what gets you into the car every weekend to go looking at your local coin shops and trying to find the one that you need.
It's also what makes the hobby very personal and very unique to you and your own experience, by deciding what's important to you, not just
Hmm.
being told or accepting that I'm going to go hunt stamps, I'm going to go hunt rare Engelhard,
Yeah.
I'm going to go hunt rare. Okay, you can do that, and I encourage you to do that if that makes you happy. But the reason why I hunt Agnon is because others aren't, and it brings me satisfaction, and I don't have to pay through the pay through the nose to get that next piece. That's also important.
Nice. Okay, so we are four pictures into
Yeah,
19,
sure.
and we're gonna keep cruising here. All right, so we get into one of the big boys, and I call this is not from a dollar perspective for this particular bar, but Engelhard, in my opinion, is kind of one of the bedrock or foundation refiners for this whole market. Engelhard has been around since. I don't even want to throw a number out there. I want to say it was the early 70s or maybe even the 60s in some
I
of
think it's
their
earlier. Yeah,
does it? Okay.
I think it
I,
is earlier. Yes.
yeah, some of the prototype bars, some of like the ingot mine stuff, the stuff that they made for other people, kind of definitely gets in there. But they got into their heyday kind of in the 80s. Is that right?
Well, yes, yes. Most of their production took place in the 1980s. Yes,
So we're talking about a very
undeniably.
large refiner that has created silver ingots or bars both in the United States as well as in Canada, as well as I believe they operate today in Australia still.
That's a debate. It's a debatable. I mean,
Okay.
there's controversy surrounding Engelhard, Australia.
Oh, okay. Interesting. I didn't know that. All right. So, anyways, tell us a little bit about this little loaf, this pea loaf.
Sure. What you're looking at here is undeniably the American Silver Eagle of vintage bars.
Okay.
This is the most standardized poured or cast 10-ounce bar in the vintage world. It's like, one of the things I love about, and it's going to sound like I'm derailing for a second, but I'm not. One of the things I love about collecting gold grain is that you're really never going to argue with anyone about what it's worth. It's just pure gold. The Engelhard P loaf is what this is referred to. P is the prefix
Yep.
ahead of the serial number. Is one of the most standard vintage bars. When you could find them everywhere, but the valuations placed on them will be a very tight range. on the social media platforms that we exist in.
Yeah.
In real life, when you're in the store or you're at a show, all bets are off on what things get valued at. But reasonably and consistently, the Engelhard 10-ounce pea loaf is a staple with a valuation range within $15,
Yeah.
where it will just, you're going to buy within that range day in and day out and not get hurt. And they are resilient to negative spot movement. They're not
Hmm.
impervious. They're just resilient.
I see.
And that's a staple of most vintage bar collectors' portfolios that also wish to have an element of stacking to them,
Okay.
meaning that they're not just trying to collect collectible, super high premium ingots that are rare. They want to stack silver. This is their way of doing it.
Yeah, we'll get into some of those high end ones if hopefully if we have time here.
Sure.
But we will get into some of those high end ones here in a minute. But let's move on to this. So this is Silvertown.
Yes.
I've never personally purchased a whole lot of these, but tell us a little bit about this particular refiner.
This is very similar to Engelhard in the bar that we just showed, the pea loaf, because these are a very standard poured collectible. These are a little rarer because they're missing serial numbers. When they don't have serial numbers, they're a little bit rarer. But the Silvertown poured 10-ounce ingot is a standard. Again, you're going to pay within a $15 to $20 range. There are people that prefer these over Engelhard pea loaves. I'm one of them.
Okay.
But they're very standard. You're not gonna pay through the nose, and you're not gonna get them for cheap. You're gonna pay and you'll notice that I'm not giving dollar valuations on these because some of these prices will be
Can
obsolete if
fluctuate
silver's
with
39, if silver's 33 or
yeah,
43 an
yeah,
ounce. These
yeah.
move. Right.
So these kind of carry a regular, somewhat of a premium or like a cushion above the spot level.
Yes.
And what we were
Yes, we're
talking about,
inching our way up.
yeah, when we say spot, just to be, I mean, I'm not going to assume anything in terms of background and knowledge about this stuff. So the spot price of a metal is the price that it trades for without any sort of premium at all. It's almost a fictional number because there's always a little bit of a premium on either the buy or the sell side of that particular number. But these are numbers that are published every day for gold, for silver, for platinum, for palladium. So this is considered the melt number and so forth. It ends up becoming kind of the benchmark that you make negotiations for on the buy side or the sell side. So that is the best definition I have for the spot price and off top of the dome. But all right. So let's move on to this next one here, to the Silvertown 5-ounces.
The reason why I wanted to show this one was because now we're starting to look at pricing that does not necessarily correspond to the price of silver. So on the previous slide, we looked at Silvertown, same brand, made around the same time, 10-ounce bars. For the sake of this conversation, and I'm just going to call it out, at the time of this recording, silver's trading at $38.26. Retail on those 10-ounce bars that we just looked at can range anywhere from $425 to $455, which is $45 an ounce.
Okay.
Now, if we can go forward, you would think that this would be somewhere around $200, $40 to $225 an ounce. No shot. The premium on these is way higher. In our world, smaller means more, almost all the time.
Yeah.
So some people start saying, well, then this is trading at $50 an ounce. There comes a point where we stop valuing them based on their weights. It's not about the weights anymore. It's about the stamps, about the story, about the collectability.
Yeah.
These are Silvertown 5-ounce ingots made at the same time as the 10-ounce. And they would trade at 50, 55, 60, well, maybe not 60, but $50 to $55 an ounce versus the previous ones, which are traded $45 an ounce and made by the same people at the same time.
Yeah. I've heard it said usually the 5s go for the same amount that the 10s go for. Maybe in this case it's actually a little bit more even, but
Per ounce, yes.
Yeah, on a per ounce basis. I guess what I mean is that the total dollar amount. So one 5-ounce you said was how much approximately right now?
These 5-ounces are, which would in this market I would see them trading for around $250 to $260.
Okay. All right. I was actually thinking about something else. I was thinking of I was thinking of some Engelhard 5s and 10s.
Oh,
like
yes, an Engelhard 5-ounce or 3-ounce is 900 to, depending on the stamps,
we have one
2,000.
of those. Yeah, we have one of those coming up. But okay. All right. Gotcha. All right. So we're looking at about 250 and then about 450 roughly is what you said on these guys today. All right.
$10 per ounce difference.
So now
Right.
we have yes, yes. So now we have some Engelhards. I recognize some of these. I won't steal your thunder. Tell us a little bit about what we're looking at.
So this is one of those examples where I will tell you that I know I'm not so educated to the point where I'm like third series, fifth, but I will tell you that if you look very carefully and if you move your mouse to the left of the one in the middle bar where it says
Yep.
11076, those little nubs there, that bar is known as a partial X8Y9, which basically means
Yep.
that during the serialization process of this bar, they accidentally did not move the radial dials away so that nothing would stamp into the bar. Well, you can see the X8 above the one. You can also see the Y9 beneath it. This is an example of both being there, X8 and then beneath it Y9.
Yeah.
So this is an example where that middle bar, which also has beautiful pour lines, might
Yep.
trade for more than another bar, which to the unassuming eye on this page appears to be the same,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
not the same, and and it will trade for a different valuation because of this error, or because calling it an error is using the word error people are very fast and loose, and obviously myself included sometimes with the word error. Not sure
Hmm.
that I would call an X8Y9 an error, but it is notable, and it is a
Yeah.
notable difference, and there is a small premium that is on these bars. I can't flip the photograph over, but what's on the back of the bars matters as well. Is there
Sure.
waving lines? Is there dimples? Is there color? Color
Yep.
is the big deal. We haven't got to color, but color is a big deal with these bars. They command huge value if if they're colored correctly.
Yeah. Yeah, so what I noticed immediately about these, I love the center bar. So like you can see how we're talking about these is giving me a little bit like works of art in terms of characteristics, qualities of the ingot here that we think are more valuable or more attractive than others. Just immediately, I can see that the pore lines what we're referring to here is the lines that you can see along the side that are where the metal had cooled and had created this kind of design that's around the edges of the metal, and we call those pour lines because it happened when the metal was poured, when the silver was poured into the mold, and then it was cooled. It for whatever reason created these kind of these special lines around it. These other ones here doesn't necessarily have that. The other thing that's super important is the clarity of the hallmark. In these examples, we're gonna look at a couple other Engelhards. You're gonna see a lot more clear kind of hallmarks. In these examples, you have a little bit of not full completeness, so there's a little bit of weakness in the stamp. It's kind of similar to like a strike of a coin being not a full strike that occurs on I don't know, a Walking Liberty $50, and you're kind of missing part of Liberty's hand or whatever. It's very similar to that. And just to reiterate, as Michael is explaining about these radio dial things, that's an important point. These pieces typically carry a considerable premium in today's market. Where would you price these about today?
They are approaching $500.
Okay.
They are
Yep, that's what I was
approaching
thinking.
$500.
A piece. Yep.
It depends. It depends. They can go above that at times. They can go below that at times. But
Hmm.
there's usually a delta between Silvertown bars and Engelhard. The challenge for us all right now is that silver spot is so high
Yep.
in a recent historic sense that the markets are struggling to find an equilibrium on the valuations of bars that are in the moderate to lower premium range, because when silver was trading at $23 an ounce, it was easy to say Silvertown 10-ounce poured bar, $300. Engelhard uh, X8Y9, four and a quarter to 450. We just had this
Yeah.
birth, and now we're just like, well, I can melt the thing for $390. So what's the premium? The
Yeah.
premiums have become depressed
Yeah. Yeah.
in relation to the spot price.
So I want to show, here's an example of, we were talking about a lot of premium for a small bar. This is a bar that I recently owned and placed with a collector. So Engelhard produced sizes that were smaller. So 3 ounce, 4 ounce, 5 ounce, 7 ounce. And especially the odd weights, the 3, the 4, the 7, these can command very high premiums. actually have another one actually in inventory right now, which is a 4 ounce with a top hallmark, which as we're talking about all this stuff, it sounds like we're speaking a different language, but there's actually a really helpful website. It's called allengelhard.com. I'm going to put a link in the show notes of this. And it's a place for people to go and learn about a lot of these refiners and specifically about Engelhard because it has cataloged all the different varieties of these bars so that you can learn about them, different styles. So this particular bar, I believe, was about $950 or so. I think when I sold it, this is a 3 ounce, and so you think about that on a percentage basis, or I'm sorry, on a like a dollar per ounce basis. We're talking about roughly $300 per ounce, which is pretty strong premium. But these are widely collected and pretty desirable, right?
Yes. So as a collector of rare ingots, you're there's no question the valuation you placed on this is actually a competitive valuation. Sometimes these get up much higher.
Yeah,
It's just if you're collecting these for yourself, I would just as some guidance, have a plan. If you're collecting for a long period of time, if you plan on leaving this to loved ones, if you plan on retiring, have a plan. Because at some point, if you present this ingot to the wrong person, they are going to look at you and say, "What are you talking about? I will
yeah,
give you $150 for this."
yeah,
And so collecting them is awesome, and I support it. And obviously, it's a core part of my business.
yep,
Whenever anybody asks me about like, oh, what should I do down the road, I always say to them, start a spreadsheet. Start a spreadsheet. Write down what you paid. Write down a note about where it goes, where you could sell it,
yep,
because you'll get great. These are only going up. I
yeah.
really believe it. They're only
Yeah.
going up.
Yeah, well, and we'll talk a little bit in a second about the market and about the collector base and the growth of it and the market today. But I agree with you. This market is in its kind of earliest stages. There is not nearly the size of, let's say, market as with U.S. coins that are in this particular market today. So there's a lot of potential here. There's a lot of people that are going to watch this podcast. They're going to get interested in vintage silver ingots. Might reach out to one of the two of us. Our contact will be in the show notes, of course. They may want to dabble into vintage ingots for the first time or start getting on a hunt themselves, go on a road trip and stop at coin shops and go look for this stuff and they'll kind of be bitten by the bug. So as more collectors enter this market, the demand for these items is going to increase. The supply is fairly fixed, right? They're not making any more of these things. And in fact, a lot of them, or I would say a lot of them, but some of them are still making their way into the melting pot.
100%. If
Yeah.
you're finding these bars in a coin shop, that means that there's ones you did not find that got destroyed.
Yeah. That's an excellent point. All right, so moving on. So just want to show a couple more Engelhards. These have some incredible stamps. These are referred to as waffle backs because the backside of the bar has this waffly display. There's another variety of this that actually looks a lot more
Grid.
yeah, more of a grid fashion. And I've been told there is the waffle back and then the grid back. Or do you know what is the correct term for these? Are these are waffle backs, right?
Those are 100% waffle backs.
Yeah,
And you
yeah,
are right in describing the other style, which almost looks like someone poured syrup in thin lines on the back of it. Those
yeah,
are called those are actually called scribble backs or
yeah.
grid backs, depending on scribble backs would be more like chaotic. Grid backs are
Yep.
more uniformed lines.
And then
And
you
it's
have
also interesting to note, this is interesting if you're watching this, I was going to wait to say this. Some of you might say, we already saw these. No, you did not. That takes
yeah.
time. You did not see these yet. These are, they say pilaf, right? This looks like a pilaf. But you notice
Oh
how
yeah,
this top is flat? This is a poured bar completely. The bar that we showed earlier with the rubber band black line in the middle,
yeah. Let me go back.
that's a
This one.
cast bar.
Yep, and it's
That is
refined. You can see.
way more common than the ones that Tony was just showing.
Gotcha.
They're worth more. They
Yeah,
trade for more.
yeah. Now, I always look for waffle. If somebody presents me with waffle backs to buy, I always buy them. This is, in my opinion, a staple of the Engelhard market, and they're very desirable. They're a fully poured bar, and they usually very well struck on the front side of it in terms of all the stamping,
One
and they have these great designs in the back.
one thing I got to ask, you can go back a second.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Were these yours?
Yeah, these are mine.
You still have them?
No, man, I don't sit on much of anything very long.
That bottom bar is a variety. It's a special variety on a very low mintage. You see the shaved,
Don't tell me this
how
stuff.
beneath this, it's shaved on the right and left. I could be a little bit mistaken. I'd have to verify with you after the podcast, but
Okay.
Recently, I was educated on that there's some iterations of these flat top pillows where there's a shaved side, part of the side that
Yeah.
represents an even smaller. I mean, this stuff goes very down
Yeah.
the rabbit hole.
You reminded me of a story. I was recently at a show down in Georgia, and this gentleman came up, and he was asking about these the Laniga $5 gold pieces that I had, and one specifically, he asked me what I wanted for it, and I gave him a price, and he looked at me like with a smile on his face and said that he could take this same coin across the room and sell it for like a couple $1,000s more than I was asking, and like all of the people around us were like staring at this guy as this old timer. He's like telling me what the coin really should be worth and whatever. And he points out that this is this really rare variety, and it's where the date on the coin is like in a particular position close to where the Liberty head was, and it's a lot more of a rare variety, etc. And I'm just kind of standing there, and I'm like, all right, well, I guess then I'm not selling it, I guess, right now. Or, I mean, as a dealer, you really don't want to do that ever. If you put a price out there and if somebody wants to take it for that price, you have to honor that. And I
Yes.
was willing to sell it to the guy for sure, but he was kind of like giving me the inside scoop in front of all of these people. And then later in the show, people were like, "Oh, did you hear about that coin that's over at that table that that's a really rare variety?" Blah blah blah. And, oh, that's your coin. Oh, really? Oh, you selling it? I was like, "Well, I don't know. I guess I got to do more research on it." Long story short, I take it back home. I do the research. I open up my volume about the Laniga Gold, and this dude was completely wrong. He was just totally wrong. He was just yeah, I mean, there was a special variety for that particular year. And maybe I know this isn't about coins, but maybe I'll just flash up the correct the variety that I had and one that the valuable one, but it was just incorrect. So
That's happened to me. I mean, that happens to all of us. Or the worst part is when it's finally gone and someone's like, "You sold that for that? That's
yeah.
twice the
Yeah.
value." I
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah.
implying that there. That's not like,
Well,
worth 5 times the amount or anything.
yeah, that's what I was worried about for a second. But
Yeah,
anyways,
no, 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 no. We're into
all right,
to-
so let's move on to this guy, Homestake.
So now we're
I've always
starting to
liked
get
these.
into,
Yep,
now we're starting to get into, just like
premium,
the Engelhard's
high
three
end.
ounce,
Yep.
these are very premium ingots. There's a lot going on with these ingots as well. Aside from the fact that these are sequential serial numbers, 9691 and 9692, the bar on the left has a weight of 8.88 ounces, which is awesome, cool number weights.
Sure.
There's a lot of reasons somebody would buy these bars. And that actually probably should be mentioned that when you're buying vintage bars, finding bars that are collected for more than one reason is always a better bet than buying something that's collected for only one reason. So,
Yep.
um, in this case, you've got sequential bars, you've got some pretty cool weights, you've got great hallmarks. That's another reason people collect bars.
Yep.
You're in that sweet spot of under 10 ounces.
Yep.
Remember, once we get to 10 ounces and below, premiums rocket. I have no problem telling you guys that I know the valuation of this pair. This pair sold for me to another dealer for over
Mm-hmm.
$2,000 for the pair,
Yeah.
$2,200 for the pair.
Makes sense.
These are 9 point, this is, oh, sorry, 8.88 ounces. I think it's an 8.42. These are not heavy ingots.
Yeah.
These were really cool. I had these for a while though. I had to wait for the right opportunity to
Yeah.
move them.
Sequentials always bring a little bit more. And we're talking about the serial number 9691 to 9692, sequential serials. And there's typically, if you sell them as a pair, they go for a little bit more, or somebody who wants to make a sequential pair out of what they had, that might be willing to kind of pay a little bit more. But that they would know that. You wouldn't necessarily know that. So I'm gonna move on to another big bar in more ways than one. So tell us the story on this bad Larry.
Sure. I was in Pennsylvania on a business trip, and anywhere I go, I do my best to carve out some time to hunt the local area shops. I won't give away my recipe, but I will tell you that I don't just go to coin shops. And if you're really looking to do this, go other places that other people wouldn't think to go. Yes,
Mm,
it is true that 99 times out of 100 there will be nothing there, but that's the joy of the hunt. I went into a flea market
mm,
and found this bar sitting in someone's shop um, for I will just say, incredibly reasonable price. This is a United States Philadelphia Mint bar,
yep.
poured between I want to say 1946 and 1951, right around
Okay.
that area. This is known as a tombstone based on its overall shape. It
Yeah.
is a massive piece. And as I said earlier in the podcast, there's always exceptions to every rule. So when I always say smaller is better, that's not always the case. This bar is so unique. There's only, I believe, less than 10 of these bars ever discovered,
Yeah.
I believe. And
Yep.
this bar sold in auction on July 3rd of 2025 for just a touch under $20,000.
Nice,
Um,
man. That's awesome.
this is a very, very rare piece of U.S. history. I always sort of wondered what type of collector buys this, and when they do buy it, what do they do with it? There's a lot of people, myself included, that just it goes in the safe, door gets closed, take it out occasionally. But I feel a piece like this should be in a glass box in someone's foyer as a conversation piece, or even possibly on
Sure.
the wall.
Sure. Well, it definitely could definitely work as a paperweight, that's for sure, man. But
Yes, it
this
would
is
hold down a few pieces of paper.
yeah, for sure. It's impressive. I've never seen this particular style, and Philadelphia mint bars in general are uber rare and extremely expensive. So we're actually talking about, we're going to show in a couple seconds here, a couple of bars from the San Francisco Mint, but each of the major mints, San Francisco, Philadelphia, Denver, a couple really rare ingots. I'm not too sure if New Orleans ever made an ingot.
I don't think so, but I'm
I
not
don't
the
think
expert
so.
on assay
And then
bars.
there was also an assay office in New York, and they are responsible for, I think, maybe a couple silver, but most of the bars I've seen out of them have been gold ones. Um, but anyways, these mint bars are extremely rare. They were the exact purpose of them. I got to do more research to figure out. Mike, do you know? Do you know like why these mints made these bars?
I read that they were used and they were sold to jewelers to select approved vendors, but obviously that's not, I did not confirm it through a primary source. I did not, or through a academic source. It was just something
Yeah,
I read on a, that they were, I cannot imagine, I could not understand when I read it why the US Mint would need to sell anything to a jeweler or,
sure.
or it didn't make any sense to me, but it is what I read.
Yeah,
So I'm not sure of the validity behind that. But I do know, as you obviously know as well, that this is something that um, this comes across your path, and it's just
yeah,
you're never going to see it again.
yeah,
You're never going to see it again, and
yes.
especially this one because there's actually an error in the purity.
Okay.
If you scroll into the 99.9 point, somebody originally to the right put a 1/2 there, and then
Hmm.
they stamped over it correctly with the 5, and does
Got it.
that make it worth more money? I don't know if it would have. I don't know if it would have went for $1,000 less if it didn't have it,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
commands a huge premium. These bars, huge
Okay.
premium.
So I just want to touch on a couple other high end bars. So David C. Davis, so we're getting into a particular refiner that, I love these bars. I love them. I own them for a very, very short period of time, and I placed them with a client of mine. And this was a refiner out of San Francisco many years ago. There's a lot of experts that are going to probably watch this video and know a whole lot more and think that I'm butchering this. So I'll just leave it to say that these are really on the high end of rarity. They rarely come up. These particular ones came with these almost these leather pouches that fit the bars absolutely perfectly. I'm not too sure if they were original to the bar, but I believe these are roughly $3,500 to $4,000 individually, a piece. There was a 5 ounce one as well as a 10 ounce one, and both of these basically had the exact same value. So the 5 ounce being a little more rare, and on a premium basis, higher dollar amount per ounce. Moving on and talking about the mints, I have 3 San Francisco mint bars just to show everybody real briefly, and then we have a fantasy ingot to talk about. And this will be a little longer episode. I think it's a really interesting conversation, though, so I'm totally fine with it. Um, so San Francisco, they also made these ingots. I put this on display as well as I had a small little display of these at the local show that I did in Bay State Coin Show up in Marlborough, Massachusetts this past weekend. One gentleman walked up, and his idea about what these were created for was to basically be the silver that was being prepared for the planchets. So the assay
Oh,
office or the mint would refine all of the silver. They would create ingots out of it of a particular purity, and then use this when actually creating the silver coins that they would later end up creating. It's a good theory. I don't know if there's any evidence to support it.
I feel bad because I know this information is probably well known, and it
Okay.
does harken back to what we were saying earlier. There's so much to know in this space. U.S. assay bars are so far away from my expertise. I just happened to find one,
Yeah.
extremely rare one in the wild, but they are yeah, there's a whole um culture
Yeah.
and you know
I love them.
database
Yeah.
of information about this out there, for lack of better
Yeah,
words.
there is information about these out on the internet, and they've been traded in like auction sites for a number of years. They're extremely rare. This particular ingot is from the late, it's actually probably from the early 1940s. And this is referred to as a Type 1 logo. I have another video on my YouTube channel that kind of explains a little bit about these. This particular one is of what's known as a 5-ounce class. So there was a stamp or a mold about that would fit about a 5-ounce ingot. They'd pour silver into them, and then there were various weights. So usually between 5 and 6.5 ounces is what most of them came out to be. This particular one is exceptionally nice. I actually still have this ingot.
Yes.
I haven't sold it yet because I kind of want a pretty nice number for the bar. It's got a perfect patina. It has the stamp is completely clear, very noticeable. I mean, there's no weakness at all to the logo, to the stamp. Um, all around, this is just kind of a perfect bar. So
Yes, it is. That is an absolutely beautiful, and then the color is also
yeah,
the contrast between the stamp and the bar itself.
yep,
It's beautiful.
yep,
Deep a lot, and the deep stamps on the both the serial and the purity are very alluring.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I will you can reach out to me through through an email if you're interested. I won't try to sell my bar here on the video, but we'll you can email me. We could possibly talk. And then I have another two more examples. So we got this one. This is a much later bar that was made. Obviously, this one has a date on it of 1959. I really like this particular bar. The logo, the stamp is really really deep and it is really clear.
Yes.
The round logo bars are slightly more scarce than some of the earlier ones. This is a serial number here, 961. This also has a lot number that you can't see on the bottom side of it. The lot, I guess, that they are creating these and building them, or the lot they were making, and then this being the particular one. 26 ounces. This is referred to as a 25-ounce class because the mold would have been to fit a 25-ounce bar. Some of them were poured a little bit heavy. This one being this 26.21. So, and I'll just throw this out there. This is approximately $8,000 bar. So, give you an idea. I don't know what that equates out to on an ounce basis, but that's what that is. And then we have what's known as a sheared bar. Now,
Mm.
this was made in the late 40s, and this has a different logo, as you can recognize here. This is referred to as a Type 2 logo. Um, I love the color and the toning, the color of this particular bar. And this particular one is made out of like a very large planter, a very large, essentially ingot that was sheared off to create these 25-ounce pieces. So very crude manufacturing here. Definitely not for like, to sell to the public or anything like that. So again, what the exact use of them were, I really need to answer this question through some research. But if you look on the very left-hand side, there is a part that you can see that the metal has been completely sheared off. And this bar
Yes.
is approximately about $6,500.
Sure.
So, all right. And then the very last one, we're getting into just this kind of upper tier or kind of fantasy, or, well, this is a fantasy ingot. I'll tell the story really, really quickly. Try to. So there was an enterprising gentleman in the 1960s and 70s, I believe, maybe a little bit later. His name was John J. Ford, and he, I believe, took these trips out west. And as part of his travels out west, he would bring back precious metals, so gold and silver and ingots that he was finding from various refiners. I understand that he ended up creating a number of fantasy ingots. So he created basically forgeries or ingots that represented places that didn't exactly exist. So, example, there is no Nevada Silver Company. This gentleman created these ingots, maybe with the help of somebody else, he stamped, created this logo to, or this hallmark to stamp into the bar, and then put these weights and so forth on them. And these bars actually traded in auctions on the East Coast, like in auctions to collectors and so forth, as being authentic pieces from the Old West and so forth. It wasn't until much later that they've discovered all of this stuff was kind of part of this, these kind of these fantasy ingots that were made in all these different varieties to represent these places that didn't really exist. Now, the funny thing is that today, this is actually one of the most rare, with the exception of your bar, the exception of your, tombstone,
Right.
which is hugely valuable. This is actually one of the most expensive, most rare bars that it trades in the market today. People actually desire and look for these quote unquote fantasy ingots from this time period. So,
I never had. I've
um,
never even touched one. Never even held one.
yeah, they're cool. Next time if I stumble upon any others, I've I've owned a couple. I don't know, 4 or 5. They exist. They're out there. They're collected and gathered up by those collectors that want the premium and the absolute best, and they put them aside. And they kind of squirrel them away for many years. But next time I happen to come up across one, I'll definitely reach out to you, man.
Do you
Um,
happen to know if if there's anything regarding the monetization of the bar? Because I was under the impression that that's illegal. That someone who tries to say this is worth, stamping a coin or a bar that's not U.S. currency with a dollar value and saying this is. Do you know anything about that in relation to this ingot or
Um,
no?
so I know that a lot of the Old West bars, a number of the bars that traded, that were true legit bars out of assay offices, would have the amount in ounces, but also a value of how much silver there was in a monetary value. Prior to us actually creating a mint out west to be able to create coins, they had a real shortage for currency. They had a shortage of coins to be able to do any kind of commerce and so forth. So you had these like private mints setting up that created their own coins and said like this was through $5 worth of gold at that whatever the stated market price was for it. Years later, the United States outlawed that and said you can't make any of your own stuff. And they I don't exactly remember what the year was. I think it was in the 1860s or something around there, maybe a little bit earlier. And because of that, today we have this whole segment of numismatics, which is this prior they call it private mint or territorial gold, from the various people that would make these things. It's a whole segment. I hope to do a podcast. I met somebody recently actually who's an expert on this in this particular area, so I'm hoping to have him on the program. But yeah, that'd be my answer to that. Is I think that they created these types of ingots with a dollar amount because at that period of time it was not illegal and they needed it for the economy so that you knew how much you had in value here, and it was easier to
Cool.
trade these than it would be to trade and do barter or whatever.
Sure, makes sense.
So, all right, I'm gonna stop our presentation there. We're definitely going a little long, but I think that's fine because this is super interesting. I think people are going to be stoked about this. We'll just wrap up with just a couple questions for you here. You do a lot of Facebook Live shows, so tell us a little bit about what's your approach to making those successful.
So the secret, well, the secret, but my approach to Facebook Lives is to try to offer diverse products as often as possible. I mean, every single week I have to provide standard bullion products. I sell dealer to dealer. I do sell to collectors directly, of course. And many of those folks are looking for as generic silver as you can possibly imagine: Buffaloes, American Silver Eagles, Canadian Maples, 10-ounce bars that are generic, Silvertown generic, you name it. But when what brings the most entertainment and brings the best experience is when you show up with something that they just can't see somewhere else. And it's not
Mm-hmm.
about whether or not there's plenty of silver rounds that I sell for the same price as the American Silver Eagle, but they're unique. You're not seeing them very often. They don't command a massive premium, but they give the collector or the dealer or the investor, however you want to look at it, an opportunity to collect or deal in something that's off the beaten path. I find that to be a my strengths, our strengths at Elevented, is that
Mm-hmm.
we offer
Mm-hmm.
this diverse product offering, and we don't focus just on the generic run-of-the-mill products that you see everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
That's happening every week. Um, we also buy collections. We buy scrap jewelry. We do everything that you would imagine would happen at a precious metals dealer. Um, and that's our model, so to
So,
speak.
what kind of buyers show up to these Facebook shows? Are they like hardcore collectors of these various vintage ingots, or are they investors in some way, or like or are casual stackers? Like, how would you describe your typical client and people that show up?
Our clients run the gamut. We have dealers that are trying to buy off Facebook because the market is so competitive there, which we understand. Then they take that inventory to their local shows or even their own shops. They stock their shops. Yes, they'd love to buy off the street. In some places they can't. So we have dealers. We have collectors that are looking for that wholesale price, and they can get it from us because we are very competitive on even the smallest purchase. We allow
Mm-hmm.
people to hold their inventory with us if they like. We'll hold on to it for them so they can build up a box, save on shipping costs. We also have customers that are, um, to be very blunt, waiting for me to make a mistake, and that's okay. Honestly, that's okay. I
It's
mean
part
it.
of this whole thing. Yeah.
It's part of it. Like I put up a round or a bar, and they're just sitting there being like, he thinks that's generic. That's a rare, but because there's
Yeah.
nothing, I can't know it all, and I don't, not
Sure.
even close. And so there's plenty of times where someone picks me off, but the feeling that they get is awesome, and I'm happy that they have it. And please keep coming because that's fine. That's great. It's part of it too. Everyone should win. Everyone should win. We try to make everybody feel like they've won and that they've
Yeah.
gotten a fair price and they've gotten something great out of the show. And we also, if I may, we
Sure.
also, and this part's really gonna make you laugh because we produce fantasy ingots
Yeah.
with our company name on them.
I was gonna ask you about
Which you
that.
can't see,
Yeah.
it's very dark. These look like they're old. And that's something that I would just caution people as well when they're collecting silver bars, which is that just because it looks old and it looks like it's made 100 years ago does not mean it
Yeah.
was. We don't
You-
ever market these as vintage. They're modern bars with our company name, and we could do a whole podcast on those. But
okay.
there's that's our average customer.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about those because I remember seeing you have like a deal with your customers with if you buy one of those bars, if you have one of those, you get a certain are you still doing that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we have the Elevented loyalty program where customers who own Elevented bars, depending on how many they own, which ones they own, this is like an incredibly like obsessive collecting mechanism or ecosystem we put together. By the way, now that you've watched this podcast, people collect our bars for serial numbers, sequentials. Every serial number of every Elevented bar is divisible by 11. So there's people collecting across series. There's 11 bars in Series 1, 22 bars in Series 2, 33 bars in Series 3. Series 4 is in production. And if you collect these bars and you register them with us, letting us know which bars you have, we periodically will do like a spot check, like, hey, can you send us a picture of your bars? It has never happened, but
Nice.
we do that. They get discounts, they get first dibs, and they can buy their bullion even cheaper than we're already selling it.
That's great. I love your energy, man. I love. I also love the fact that I've been somewhat responsible for you getting into all of this.
Yes, I wasn't
That's
sure if you
inspired.
remembered that.
No, I did. I do. I'm super psyched because I just love seeing new businesses pop up. People have business models. They're very enterprising and they create these ideas like the Elevented Club. That is so cool. That is. I was
Thank you.
thinking as you were telling all this, I was thinking like, can I give people a percentage discount if they have a number of my business cards or something? Is there some way? Because I always ship a business card with a coin whenever I sell it. Maybe I should include little like stamps like those Subway, where you used to put the sandwiches.
To get them to send your card back to me, you'll
Yeah,
stamp it out.
something like that. Something like that.
I'll help you with that.
Okay. Anyway, hey, dude. Hey, this has been super cool. I think it's been very informative for everybody. I'd love to have. We didn't even scratch the surface in terms of the questions I had about the market and all of this stuff. So we'll have to do another one. But I just want to say thank you again for
Thank you.
and where can people find you? So you do these Facebook lives, but how can they find you on Facebook to
Sure.
get part of this?
So first of all, I do my Facebook Lives in the Element Exchange. The Element Exchange is a group you can join. If you need help, if you need an invite, just reach out to me or Tony. He'll direct you to us. We have our own business page on Facebook as well, which is Elevented Inc. Page is new. We're still building it out. We don't have much of it. We don't have much of an Instagram presence, but Facebook is a great place to find me. My email address I can share is, and we can drop it in the chat or
Yep.
wherever.
Yep.
Mayor at Elevented Inc. And you can reach out to me with any questions. If you ever have something you need help with, you can ask me for help. Help is free. Just let me know if you have a question about something you own or a bar. Hey, I saw this in the store. They wanted this. Does that seem reasonable to you? Happy to help you with that. And by all means, please reach out to
Great.
us. And
That's
thank you,
great.
Tony. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Cool. All right, man. Have a good one, and I hope to see you at a show or something sometime soon. All right.
You too, buddy. Take care.
All right. See you.